Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back here with another My Team Career Mode video, and it is qualifying for the Mexican Grand Prix weekend. It's certainly going to be a pivotal qualifying, I have to say, looking at the championship standings. Of course, we are going to begin the video with having a recap of last time out, which was of course at Spa. If you haven't watched that, you might want to click off the video now and then rejoin afterwards, because of course we are going to go over what happened there before we get into what is quite a big gap to the Mexican GP. We've got a season break in there and plenty of R&D to administrate. In terms of the standings, though, as you can see, Checo Perez has the lead for the first time in the season. We have led the order all the way up until Hungary, but then that win last time out for Checo with ourselves P8 means that he has a 5-point lead heading into his home Grand Prix, but also one of my stronger tracks on the calendar, Mexico, of course. So it's certainly going to be a very interesting fight between us two this weekend, but he did manage to take the win at Belgium last time out. That's where his run of form started last season. This season, it's suddenly looking like he's starting to get into that sort of form again towards the end of the season, of course. Last time out, drove fantastically, got a great start, and just stayed out front. He was pretty comfortable. Of course, Bottas did have a mechanical failure. He was stuck behind Bottas for a little bit and around him, but once Bottas has gone, he just flew off, and he drove a really fantastic race there. Checo certainly looking very decent heading into these final two rounds of the season with his home race and then Saudi Arabian Grand Prix left. But a fantastic drive from him last time out. It would have been one of those for Valtteri Bottas, but unfortunately the second mechanical failure in a row for him. It was looking like he would have been competing for the top three in the championship around the likes of Verstappen. He was comfortably ahead of his teammate before he started to have the reliability troubles, but a real shame for him. Totally out of his control, but he's not going to be able to retain his Drivers' Championship title this season. Yes, he is sadly out of that. Hamilton and Verstappen, though Hamilton took a lovely P2 last time out to make it his third podium in a row. No fastest laps this time, but really solid result for him, I have to say. Bit of a poor start, dropped behind Lance Stroll, but he drove decently well. He drove a solid, consistent race. You know, it was an okay race for him. P2, it was a good race. It was a good race. Suddenly, when the likes of Verstappen crumbling a bit around him, Bottas having troubles, managed to avoid all of that to take a decent amount of points, and that means he's now in the fight with Max Verstappen for P3 in the championship come the end of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. They could still get into the top two, fight with me and Checo, but that would take quite a bit of work, especially looking at that gap, I've got to say. So I think it's pretty much nearly decided. It's not mathematically impossible, but it is going to be ourselves versus Checo for the championship, barring disaster. But those guys are going to be fighting further behind. Bottas now looking pretty comfortable down there for P5. Take a lot of work from him to get up into the top four. Then Lance Stroll leads the best of the rest after the second podium of the season for him. He got a fantastic P2 in Spain, nearly got the win. We managed to almost steal it off him on the last lap. P3 last time out, there was a stunning drive from him. A really great start. Managed to get ahead of Verstappen and Hamilton, I do believe it was. He was P3, and that's where he finished. Struggled a little bit at points, maybe dropping a bit back, but he was so consistent. Love to see it. Fantastic driving from him, and a well-deserved podium. And that puts him on 43 points, which is, as I've said, the best of the rest. 3 points ahead of Lando Norris, who took a P4. So close to repeating what he managed to do at Hungary. But nonetheless, a great drive from Lando to take some decent points. That's pivotal for him in the championship, because after a rocky start to the season, to say the least, he is really coming back and is equal on points with Charles Leclerc, who had decent pace. You'll see it from that fastest lap, but the strategy was all over the place, I've got to say. Led him to P16. He was stuck out there on the slicks in intermediate conditions. That was after, of course, he decided to go for a two-stopper in the slick part of the race. It really did not play out well for him. Maybe a bit of an out-of-the-box strategy, and I would certainly put a bit of gaffer tape over that and send it down to the basement or the loft. I don't know what he's got in his house, but 40 points on the board for him at the moment. He's got quite a bit of work to do if he wants to top this midfield group. However, I certainly wouldn't doubt that happening. Then Seb Vettel for Aston Martin took his first points since France, where he got that wonderful podium. He's now on 33, still potentially in the mix to fight those a little bit further in front, especially with the one-stop strategy being quite effective at Mexico from further back. So Vettel, he could stand a chance of getting a bit further up the field. However, probably want to just sustain his position from charging cars behind. One of those is Pierre Gasly, 1 point behind Seb Vettel now, quite a bit behind his teammate, which I'm sure he'd be quite annoyed about. He's been overall quicker, but his teammate has played that strategy perfectly. And Pierre, he's got quite a bit of work to do. P5 last time out, it was a solid result for him and AlphaTauri, but still got to keep fighting at the moment. He needs to try and fight with Vettel a little bit, get a bit further up the order towards his teammate come the end of the season. Similar for Carlos Sainz, no points last time out, 31 for him, still on the board. P11 fought from further back in the field but couldn't take any points. A disappointment for him and Ferrari with no points last time out, not helping them in the drivers or the constructors, so plenty of work to do for that duo this weekend. Then Sainz's fellow countryman Fernando Alonso, what a shame for him. At Hungary, really promising quali. Similar at Belgium, then he takes grid penalties, gets potentially into the mix at the end of the Belgian Grand Prix, stays out on the slicks, clips us a little bit more of a racing incident, then rejoins the track in a sense. He was into Eau Rouge up through Radion. And we're heading through Eau Rouge side by side. He sort of then drifts out a little bit. I think he just tapped our rear. Then sort of ends up going off the track, tries to swerve back on, spins it, nearly takes out quite a few of the cars. But a real shame for Fernando, a bit of a race to forget there, 27 points for him. Equal with my teammate Yuki, who finally got some points. His first points since that single one in Great Britain. Great drive from him. Love to see it from towards the back of the grid and finished ahead of us even. So 7 amount of points as Fernando Alonso. Hopefully he can fight towards the top 10 in the last couple of rounds. Then Daniel Ricciardo out the back of this pack. He's got slower machinery in front with the likes of the Alpine and the AlphaTauris and the Aston Martin, but really not getting the results he needed. He's consistently been in the points since Austria, 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th. However, sadly, it seems to be going a bit downhill with that form. His only other point score with a great result in Bahrain. But I have to say, Ricciardo really not looking that great in the second half of the season in terms of scoring decent amounts of points. 26 for him, right at the bottom of this pack. And then Giovinazzi scored. No one else has from there down. So plenty to play for at the front of the drivers' standings. Ourselves versus Checo, and it's going to be a very interesting race this weekend. One of my stronger tracks, but his home race. Really, really can't wait for it. It's going to be plenty of fun. And then, of course, the battle for P3 and then P6 further back there. In terms of the constructors, Red Bull sailing away with it as it stands. They're comfortably ahead of Mercedes, who sit in P2. We're still close-ish to Mercedes. A disaster for them at the end of this season. Could invite us into P2. However, we're looking like we're going to be staying there. Then plenty of a battle on for P4. That's what you want to watch. AlphaTauri with a 4-point lead over Ferrari after a stunning race weekend last time out. P3 and Pi. I don't know, maybe Lance Stroll had a celebration pie to finish there, but P3 and P5 at the flag. Really great drive from them last weekend. That puts them P4 ahead of Ferrari. It's then McLaren P6. So that battle from AlphaTauri to McLaren, there's just 9 points in it. It's all to play for into the final 2 rounds of the season. Plenty to watch there with AlphaTauri, Ferrari and McLaren. Aston Martin looking pretty solid for P7. However, some good points for Alpine, who are only 6 points behind. That could get them into that spot. Alfa Romeo P9 ahead of Williams and Haas. Williams and Haas who haven't scored. So all to play for in the drivers for the championship and plenty of slightly minor placings. And then, of course, similarly, in the constructors standings. A big battle for P4 at the moment. So plenty of action left. We're going to renew our sponsorship with Shark. We've got some activity set there already. We are, I do believe, the second best team in the R&D now, and that's not behind Red Bull. That is behind Mercedes, as you can see. Got a couple of upgrades, an ultimate brake upgrade and a major aero front downforce upgrade. We are, sadly, though, the least reliable car, and that is worrying me a tad, because it might not end well, I have to say. In terms of this, we can lose morale, 25% off CE reliability testing. No.
Thanks. I know these kind of decisions can be challenging.
No, that's not really going to work, because it's just more like to fail, and then we'll have to pay more R&D to go and sort it out, because they've made an absolute mess of it. It's like yeah, that's not going to go well. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. Completed without issue. We've now got the best car on the grid. I don't think that'll last until Mexico, but savour this moment, people. Savour this moment. You've got to love it. We're looking really solid in the brakes. Look at that lead we've got on the chassis. I think we might take our foot off the gas a bit in that department. No, we've got a high cash balance. We are saving up for a teammate next season. Oh, thank you, Jeff. I don't think we need a rival, mate. I think we've got our own decided, and we did lose that rivalry against Checo. I'm not really bothered, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that because I've lost. I'm really not bothered, because the thing for us is to focus. Oh, we can get that in. That's nice. The thing for us is to really just be focusing on the battle with Checo in the championship. That's our focus at the moment. We don't need any other real battles. Oh, right, we can get that in too. Right, let's pile in the upgrades. These extremely cheap upgrades we can get at the moment. And we also want to focus a bit on the aero, but now we can continue on. Personnel department.
We need you to step in here.
Do we want awareness, or do we want racecraft? Well, we've been running through Sonoda's sim data, and they appear to be cutting it fine when it comes to their fuel load. We don't want this to occur in an actual race. How should we approach this? We'll just go with that. To be honest, he can crash at the end of the season. One of the races get us some points, the others. I'd much rather have that than P11 and P11 both times, to be honest. We need a little bit of help for the constructors, but to be honest, we're pretty comfy in that at the moment, so no need to fear. And there we go. We are heading towards a season break now. As I said, I'm not investing in the departments at the moment. That is because you might have realised we are watching both Leclerc and Norris. They're 15 million, so we are keeping a good amount of money in the bank at the moment to save up for them. And then, of course, the plan will be for us to potentially get another upgrade in. Maybe make durability spec 2, just in case one of those drivers does want that, if we have the money. But it's about having the money for the driver, because if you don't have the money to pay the driver, then we can't really buy them, can we? In terms of what have we got, is this, wait, is that, what's this? That is a minor, from minor front wing downforce. Halo, major rear downforce. I'd love to get that in, but we just don't have enough R&D at the moment. I think we'll have to continue along. Right, we've been spat out onto the 14th. It looks like we're not going to be able to get an aero upgrade unless we go something a bit smaller. That's minor DRS. I don't really want to have to shove in a minor upgrade. Again, all minor. We're probably better going for the major Halo upgrade.
Hey, boss.
Oh.
I think we could better manage our time by organising
cash or 50% off the front nose cone structure. I said I was lifting off with the chassis department, but you've got me. Oh, you got me a bit excited. Oh, it's about a power cut. Ongoing building work near our facilities resulted in the nearby power cables being damaged, and as a result, we lost power to the facility. Thankfully, our insurance covers us for this, and we have received a substantial amount of cash in compensation. The chassis department will have suggested they could use some of the cash to improve their pipelines and speed up their upgrades. What do you think we should do? Improve pipelines or decline? Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. Oh, lovely. Now, and I said I would lift off the throttle a little bit with this, but look at that. There's a chance we could get it in. You know what I'm doing? I'm like stuff aero. Stuff aero. There we go. Stuff aero. Oh, Oh, Vettel! Oh, what a shame. To be honest with you, I thought if someone's going to retire, it'd be Kimi Raikkonen. But, right, Seb Vettel's retiring. That's a bit of a shame. I would have liked it if he could have continued along a bit, but it'd be interesting to see if anyone else does decide to retire. Real shame for Seb that he's out of F1 now. He's going to be retiring. Hopefully, he enjoys his retirement. I'm sorry, I miss F1 there. Real shame there. That is going to spice things up in the driver market. We will officially have to have a rookie next season to replace Seb. And of course, he is no longer on there because he's retiring. So, I wonder who's going to be taking his seat. Maybe Juan Yuzhou, Matsushita, Aitken, Giotto, Islet, Lundgaard. We don't know. Maybe even Tictum. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But that is someone who's retiring. No! Dear, I really wanted that upgrade in. It's not going to cost us much, but it is not going to be in for the Mexican GP. We're right at the bottom of the stack there, really, with the powertrain. I was hoping we'd get that in just to boost us a little bit. It's not going to be. We're pretty much equal with Mercedes and Red Bull at the moment. Ferrari and McLaren have really caught up, though. So those two are right in the mix. It's looking interesting there. Yes, that's going to help us a little bit, and that shoves us back to the top. It's a war in the R&D at the moment to have the best car.
Okay, we've had the new parts come through the
And okay, 50% off the ECU, or 1,000 R&D. Now this is a weird one because that's going to be more than 1,000. Right, basically, that for the ECU, that is going to save us 612 because that's half price. Ish. This is then going to get, well, that's a no-brainer, isn't it?
The department wants me to pass.
Of course you choose the 1,000. That makes a lot more sense, I think. Want a bit more bang for your R&D. Anyway, what have we got that we can have a think about investing in? I was thinking about the Halo. We no need to rush it. We can manage to get that in. That is sorted. And we are piling on the upgrades for this weekend. And also Jeddah. Come on. 2 upgrades. It'd be, well, 3 upgrades actually. It'd be really great if we could get all 3. Definitely really need to get the 28th one. Okay, good. Oh dear. Please get the 28th. Yes! Okay, we failed 1, which I do believe was the R&D durability. And oh, look at that. We've got the best car on the grid. Fantastic there. A real shame with that because it's going to be kind of costly. We've still got the worst car in the reliability department. Not worrying at all. Oh, and they've brought us in a turbo upgrade. Ferrari. Thank you very much, Ferrari. ERS system. Why not? Let's get that in too. Right, we are piling in the upgrades at the moment. We've already got plenty of upgrades in for this weekend. We're bringing in an aero upgrade, 2 powertrain, and a durability upgrade for Jeddah, providing they don't fail. And we have a lovely looking lead over Mercedes and Red Bull in the R&D standings. We've virtually completed all the chassis upgrades. 2 in there, 1 there, and 1 there. The lead we have in the chassis, we've got the best chassis on the grid by far. The worry for this weekend has to be durability. It really does. But I think we'll survive. I think we'll survive, hopefully. It's going to be less of a sort of, I don't know, struggling for pace weekend. I think it could be more of a struggling to keep the car alive weekend, potentially. You don't know. Hopefully we'll be all right, but we've only had 1 mechanical failure this season, and that's with the worst reliable car on the grid. But chassis and aero is going to be pivotal this weekend. We're not too bad in aero. We're fantastic in chassis. It is Mexico, so powertrain maybe not as important. It's going to be a very interesting GP weekend. And, of course, we are going to have a look at the R&D graph in a second. Before we do, if you haven't already, guys, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But now it's time to have a look at where we are on the R&D graph. Having a look at the R&D chart, well, I could look at this all day, I've got to say. Can't take my eyes off it. Look at that chunky lead we have got at the top. We've actually launched ourselves. We seem to have dropped a boulder on the other teams in terms of upgrades. Look at that. Massive lead over Mercedes and Red Bull, who are pretty evenly paired. So there is a little gap with Mercedes slightly ahead. However, it's really going to come down to the drivers in that one. McLaren and Ferrari, just behind, are making progress. They're close enough to get into the mix Still a little bit of a gap there, but between McLaren and Ferrari, nothing in that too, really. And it's going to come down to the drivers. Alpine aren't quite there this weekend, stalled a bit on upgrades, I've got to say. They're quite a chunk behind Papaya Orange of McLaren and the Scarlet Red of Ferrari. They are quite a chunk, actually, behind a similar-ish chunk from ourselves to P2 in the order, and they do lead Aston Martin, who have been piling in upgrades like ourselves. They are right on the back of Alpine. It's then AlphaTauri. The gap's there a little bit bigger than you find further up between McLaren and Ferrari, but still, it's going to come down to the drivers. That's a nice midfield of 6 cars, and it really is all to play for in that bunch. Then you've got to go a bit further back to Alfa Romeo, who really have been stalling on upgrades since the French GP weekend. They are now quite a chunk behind AlphaTauri and Aston Martin, but still a decent amount ahead of a charging Williams team and Haas. They're really pushing to get back into the mix, and they're catching onto the back of a struggling Alfa Romeo team. The gap's still pretty big in that, so it might not be that competitive between those teams. However, we could still see a good fight back there. So a summary of that: ourselves looking fantastic at the top. Hopefully Yuki can take advantage of that, of course. Really has underperformed at points this season, so it'd be really fantastic if he could bring us something out the bag. I was hoping for a little bit more than what he's brought us in terms of the points. This is his weekend to show me what he can really do. That's definitely the right way to put it. And then, of course, at Jeddah too, because we're trying to get in some more upgrades for then. But that massive lead ahead of Mercedes and Red Bull, those guys will be squabbling in terms of the drivers, of course, with the cars being very similar. McLaren and Ferrari can get into the mix. Those two are very close. It could take a little bit of work for those, though. Then Alpine, of course, back there. They've started to drop away. Part of that midfield with Aston Martin, AlphaTauri. Then a little bit distanced Alfa Romeo, Williams, and Haas. So all to play for with that. In terms of the engine, we're probably going to change that energy store, which we are, of course, doing. That's what I've opted to do with that. The CE, TC, MGUH, MGUK and ICE are still very, very decent. So my plan, I think, is to save these. Well, not save these, sorry. To use these this weekend, and then we get a fresh component for the ICE, MGUK, MGUH, TC and CE. I'm saying them in their abbreviated form because it's a bit quicker to say. That is certainly the plan, generally just because I think we want the maximum amount of power for the final round of the season. We're fine with the gearbox at the moment. Only 6% wear on that after the Belgium Grand Prix. So it's looking very interesting in the R&D standings. And with the sun blazing at us for all of the sessions today, I think it's time to head into qualifying. The last few races we've had, I think it was the last 4 now races we've had where it's been raining at some point, whether that's quali, race or both. I was hoping that we'd have sunshine, and it is forecasted for sunshine in Q1. However, to me that looks like we're going to be having clouds for the whole of qualifying until potentially we get sunshine and clouds at the end of Q3. So a bit of a shame there. It's going to be quite cloudy for most of it, especially Q1 and probably most of Q2. Hopefully the sun might come out for us in Q3, and I'm pretty confident we will get there with the strength of our car, and also this being one of my strongest tracks. Gasly out on track, and Latifi. They'll be joined by Nikita Mazepin in his Haas. We're going to use our first set of softs here, and we are going to go out there and join them in Q1, and hopefully we'll be able to set a really good lap on our first attempt. As always, Q1, 2 and 3, you want to be out there. It's like a buffet. You want to be out there quickly so that you can get a nice bit of clean air, avoid a large gaggle of cars as we are really messing up our start to this lap. Gasly, of course, has gone quickest, but it really is. You want to get out on track, you want to get going, and you want to try and put in a decent lap to start with, because if you need to go again, you can go again on that set of tyres, and then you might even need to go again after that. You don't know. So wanting to get out nice and early make sure we're pretty comfy in this session. Try and get a nice banker in and then sit back and enjoy Q1. Charles Leclerc, 1 minute 15.668, I do believe that was, looking up at the top of the screen. Lovely lap in his Ferrari. Could take a little bit of time for that to come rivaled as we steam into the middle sector, I have to say. Definitely struggling a little bit under braking into that corner. He just locked up that, but really nice through the double apex corner. Now, can we get it nicely through this S's section? As we're just going to try and keep it nicely. Ricciardo going quickest. Now that certainly is a little bit surprising because he really is struggling this season compared to where that McLaren is. And there we go. My teammate Yuki topping the charts with a very decent lap time in the 1 minute 15s. Can we keep it nice and clean through the stadium section, which I don't know if he'll be erupting this weekend with the sort of pace we've got in this car. Checo's going to find it hard to rival our team in that Red Bull. Our lap time is a little bit sloppy though, I've got to say. We can certainly do better than that, and my teammate is quite a way in front. It was a decent start to the lap, but in the middle sector it started to unravel a tad. So why I wanted to get out early, because now we can go and give it another shot. Why not? Not really going to reach the heights of our first sector last time on the last lap, as we are 3/10 slower. Gosh, that was a sloppy middle sector this lap. Didn't feel that bad. Felt a bit slow, but didn't feel too bad. And you can see we are actually struggling. All of a sudden we've reached quali. Where has the pace gone? Free practice, I was looking comfy. I'm feeling comfy in the car, and it was feeling pretty decent. All of a sudden, into quali, into Q1, and it's just not that great anymore. Hopefully we can start to hook it up towards the end of this lap. Always a good thing to do, and look at that. We certainly lost some time in the last lap through the middle sector. We make that up this time round. Trying to catch onto the back of Raikkonen. Let's keep it nice and clean in this sector. Leclerc's lap wasn't that great. He is only P4 at the moment. Gasly behind him in the Alpha Tauri. Stroll behind George Russell. Struggling at the moment. We are going to improve. Only to P5 ahead of Pierre Gasly. This is a very disappointing start to Q1. Low tyre wear though. It isn't that warm here at Mexico. So it certainly isn't causing too many problems when it comes to thinking about can we go again or not. We are still pushing though. We're going to see if we can make it 3 push laps. Not that much tyre wear isn't going to cost us that much time, and finally this lap getting decently through that first sector that we've really struggled in on the last lap. Esteban Ocon, P7, drops Russell down a place. I was thinking though, Russell, P7, he's looking good in that Williams. The Williams starting to catch up to the main pack. Lando Norris goes quickest though in his McLaren, fighting back up the order. Great work at Hungary, fantastic at Belgium last time out. He is looking a lot stronger towards the end of this season. We are not improving by loads. Beginning to worry a little bit for our potential Q3 expeditions, as now the final sector isn't really playing that nicely for us with Kimi Raikkonen in front. Can we hook it up nicely at the end of this one? It's a good exit. That saves us a 1/10.5 over the line. Only P6. We're going to return to the pits, but that is a disappointing start to qualifying here in Mexico. Your standings then for Q1. Plenty of drivers to decide to go again. We're not going to take too much of a look at the top 10. Bottas still ahead of Perez and Hamilton, but Charles Leclerc jumping up there, improving. Of course, yes, he has gone out for another lap, but it does show he does have the pace this weekend, and he's going to get into the mix there. But his teammate only went once and still manages P5. So great work from Carlos in quali. Perez still ahead of Hamilton, of course, then Sainz, Norris, and my teammate Yuki Tsunoda. Great to see him not having to go again in qualifying. Daniel Ricciardo, I do believe, will have gone again to P8. That's really disappointing for him. Gone again, still not quicker than his teammate, and that is pretty poor, I've got to say. Slower than my teammate too. Gosh, that is a bit disappointing for Daniel. He just doesn't have the pace compared to Lando, and we're seeing it time and time again. Then it's Max Verstappen, P9, in his Red Bull. I think he's gone. Yeah, he will have gone again. That is really... Wait, did he go again? This is quite confusing. I don't think he went again. Not entirely sure. Either way, for Max, that is not where he needs to be. Quite a chunk off his teammate. That's 4/10 off Checo. He just doesn't seem to have the pace this weekend. He's got to pull it together before Q2 and 3. Then the Alpine side by side. Ocon has improved to P10, showing that he has got a lot of potential in that Alpine. He has struggled, I feel like, at the start of the season, but really starting to come to him towards the end of the season. Similarly for Fernando. And those Alpines are looking really, really strong, I've got to say, of course. Esteban ahead of his teammate Fernando. That's P10-11. Both those comfortably through. The same thing for the AlphaTauris. Those two are sandwiching me. P12 for Pierre, P14 for Lance, who managed to improve. Great to see both of them through. And the gap this season has really reduced in quality. That's only 5/10 now. It's been at about a second, I remember, like somewhere around about Imola. So really great to see those being a bit closer at the team. Lance really I think he's starting to enjoy AlphaTauri. A great team. And they've maybe struggled a bit back in the R&D, but in the racing and the performance, the two of them have driven fantastically well. Then, Sebastian Vettel, P15 for Aston Martin. Great to see him through. He is retiring, so this is his second to last race weekend. A real shame for him to be trying. But then if he wants to retire, fair enough, Seb. But great to see him through to the next part of qualifying, just behind Lance Stroll. Looking all right in his Aston Martins. They aren't looking that quick. And his teammate does not join him. George Russell is the man who gets through. Mr. Saturday performs once again just behind that much quicker Aston Martin of Vettel. A great drive from Russell. Which means we have lost Antonio Giovinazzi in qualifying in his Alfa Romeo. It's a bit of a shame for him because he's had some really great performances in quali. He managed to make it through to Q2 a few times, but still a very solid result in that Alfa for him. P17 comfortably ahead of his teammate Kimi Raikkonen. Then Latifi, sky high for him. Having a look at the order. Wow, Nicholas usually back towards Nikita, but fantastic qualifying for him. P18 in his Williams, his teammate through to Q2. Great work from Nicholas. He's ahead of Robert Schwartzman. That is absolutely lovely to see. Nicholas ahead of Robert, Mick, Raikkonen, Mazepin there. I'm pretty surprised by that, and I think he's had the potential to go and do it in that Williams car, but he's just sort of been sitting around the back with Nikita Mazepin. So great to see Nicholas a bit further towards the top of that pack there. He's ahead of a struggling Robert Schwartzman. Couldn't improve to where his teammate is. Only 5/10 behind, improving in that Aston Martin. Hopefully he can get some decent results next season, but again, out in Q1. Mick Schumacher is also out in Q1. He is in the slowest car on the grid, so P20 is not the end of the world. Only just off the back of Schwartzman and Latifi, so a decent drive for him in the Haas, ahead of a struggling Kimi Raikkonen. Oh dear, he's 4/10 off his teammate there, just not really performing where he'd want to be, behind the Haas of Schumacher and the Williams driven by Latifi and the Williams driven by Russell. He's not really where the car is, and a bit of a struggle for Kimi, a bit of a shame there. But P21, he'll have a bit of work to do in the race. Then Nikita Mazepin, P22, no real surprises there for him to go out in last in Q1, but very interesting there. Both AlphaTauris make it through, both Alpines. Seb Vettel, the only of the two Aston Martins to make it through, though. His teammate Schwartzman out. Russell makes it through, Mr. Saturday. Great performance from him. As I've said, though, great to see Vettel managing to make it through to Q2 after some struggles in qualifying, I've got to say. We've got quite a bit of work to do heading into Q2 to try and find some pace. There is plenty of action to be found in the field. Can Verstappen start to pull it together, and what can my teammate manage in our fantastic car this weekend? Plenty of questions to be answered, but we have answers for Q1. Giovinazzi, Latifi, Schwartzman, Schumacher, Raikkonen and Mazepin out. That's both Haas's and both Alfa Romeos with a Williams and an Aston Martin. No real shocks there. Just great to see Latifi a bit higher up in the order, and a bit of a struggle for Kimi Raikkonen. But now it is time to move on to Q2. I'm hoping that Q2 might be a little bit more plain sailing. Thankfully, it isn't sailing out on track like it has been for a few sessions this season in qualifying, but we are gonna join, who's that? Charles Leclerc heading out on track on those soft tyres, matching his scarlet red Ferrari. Putting on a fresh set of softs, we might be able to do a few laps because, of course, tyre we're pretty low at the moment. 30 laps lifespan on the softs. The mediums are pretty soft tyres, but a lot slower. And then your hards, 50 lap lifespan. So the tyres really quite durable at the moment, especially that soft compound. We're going to get out there and join the Ferrari. The stadium section to be able to begin our lap. As always, out nice and early onto the track. Mercedes, a Red Bull and AlphaTauri not opting to come out early in this one. Bit of a surprise, because if you struggle a bit on your first lap, you're not going to have long to turn it all around to get out again. Those guys may be going for one run in this session. You don't know. Probably going to pop out later. But Charles Leclerc, 1 minute 15.5. That's an okay lap. That will certainly put him mid-pack, I feel, in terms of this group we've got in Q2. It certainly isn't going to be breaking any sort of records that we've seen from him last season, as that is a very sloppy first sector. We just couldn't hook it up. We're not hooking things up nicely, I've got to say, at the moment. And the pace just isn't there. It is really not coming to us in qualifying at points this season. We're certainly a bit stronger in the race, and we saw that actually last season, I think it was, here at Mexico. We just gave through into the final part of quali, and I think we managed just in the top 10 by the end of it. We weren't really fantastic. Then the race pace was fantastic. We were blisteringly quick once we got into racing action compared to what we were like in quali. We were competing with faster cars. Carlos Sainz, though, 1 minute 15.2, as finally we are hooking up that middle sector. That felt really, really nice. The first sector's going to cost us this time round, but that final sector wasn't the worst at all. So that puts us quickest. Finally, hooked it up. 1 minute 15.1, and I know we can go quicker in the first sector. So that is lovely. We hooked up the final two sectors nicely. Still work to do in the first sector, I've got to say, because the mistake was through this section, just went too deep there. That's going to save us. Look at how much time you can save there. Half a second it cost us. A lot of pace left in the bank. We don't need to push, though, because we are pretty comfortably going to be through to the final part of quali. We don't need another lap, so I'm just going to back off and return to the pits. Spicy. You've just got to take a glance at this order to see that someone has thrown it around a little bit towards the end of the session. Maybe we weren't as safe as I thought, but still, we're through P9 and we've saved a nice set of tyres. Definitely, I think, the right option not to go out, but a little bit close for comfort there. I've got to say, P9, though, we are through to Q3, and it certainly should be an interesting one, because look at this, plenty of drivers have gone again. Checo Perez, quickest, managed to go again and improve, but still not that far ahead of Bottas, considering he had an extra opportunity out on track. But Perez showing he has got the pace, and he can beat his teammate and the Mercs this season. And of course, today, question is, can he carry that through to Q3? It's all to play for in terms of the Red Bulls versus the Mercs and myself and Yuki Tsunoda. Look at that, P4 there for him. So if you have a look at the order, it's Perez ahead of Bottas. Red Bull, considering he had an extra run, not overly quick. Bottas looking good, though. Then Lando Norris, P3, managed to improve. And considering he's gone that close to Checo Perez, maybe the McLarens have a bit more pace than you might think, especially in the hands of Lando Norris there. So really great work from him. He is out of Q2 and into Q3. Not back to the changing room for him, unlike his teammate. We'll get to Daniel Rick in a second. Then Yuki, great to see him up there in P4. Only 1.5 tenths off Perez, so maybe if he can find an extra tenth in quali, he might really be in the mix there for the top 5. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully he can do that when we get into quali, though. Looking decent for him. Hamilton ahead of Verstappen. Verstappen's going to be a bit frustrated there. Those two pretty close in the championship, so watch out for the battle between those two in Q3. Then heading further down the field, both Ferraris are through. Charles Leclerc, though, only P7. Carlos didn't have to go again. So Leclerc only just in front of his teammate with an extra run. Charles, once again, struggling in qualifying. Nowhere near as much pace as Norris, who managed to go again. Got to be a bit worried for Charles this weekend. Might be towards the bottom of the top 10 when we get into the next part of quali. So yeah, bit disappointing for Charles there in his Ferrari. Only just quicker than his teammate with an extra opportunity. Of course, Carlos P8, he, I'm assuming, didn't go out again. Considering that, decent work from him, 1 minute 15.1, his best lap time ahead of us. So, decent work to be able to get comfortably through and not have to do 2 runs. Similarly for us through in P9. And then Alonso joins the club. Interestingly, he makes it through in that Alpine. And that Alpine's strong, but it isn't extremely strong. And making it through means that we've got both Red Bulls, both Mercs, both Ferraris, both Dynamo Mechanics F1 team cars, and then a McLaren and an Alpine. So great work from Fernando Alonso in that Alpine. Gets it into Q2. Hopefully a good quality result this weekend will equate to points, unlike the last 2 rounds of the season. Then, out in Q2, a surprise or two there. Daniel Ricciardo out P11. Gasly P12. Ricciardo once again struggling compared to his teammate. He went out again, yet 6/10 slower. It's showing you the gap, generally, why he's at the bottom of the midfield fight. Really struggling this season, and Daniel will have to start from P11. That's before grid penalties are applied for engine component changes. Then it's Pierre Gasly, P12 for AlphaTauri. He's going to be a bit frustrated with that. Out-qualified by Alonso. Alonso, of course, in a better car, but out in Q2 with his teammate for Pierre. Bit disappointing, I've got to say, but he'll be fighting up the field in the race, I'm sure of that. Then Seb Vettel improved to P13. Solid work from him in the Aston Martin. Of course, with the news of his retirement, pushing a little bit harder to get an okay quality result. The Aston not looking that fantastic this weekend, but doing well in his hands compared to what Robert's managing to do a bit further down the field. Then Esteban Ocon in his Alpine can't quite match his teammate, but growing confidence for him. He will start P14. Got to be happy with that in the Alpine, I think. As I said, he has struggled a bit this season, so good to see him a bit further up the order, I think is definitely the way to say it. Because he has been down P15, P16. Yes, it's only a place or 2 gain, but it is that confidence that's coming with it and getting ever closer to his teammate in the qualifying times. Then Lance Stroll ahead of George Russell. Stroll just off the back of Esteban Ocon. Maybe the low focus costing him a bit, not that close to his teammate in the end. P15 though. Bit of work for the AlphaTauri to do if you want to stay ahead of Ferrari and McLaren in the Constructors' Championships. That, of course, will come down to the race. And then, of course, George Russell, no surprises there in that Williams, is P16. So, all to play for into Q3. Red Bulls, Mercedes, me, maybe even my teammate, potentially adding the McLaren or the Ferraris. I have no clue who's going to be on pole, but all I can tell you is Ricciardo and Gasly out in Q1. Maybe a bit of a surprise, having both of them out. Sorry, not Q1, Q2. Both of them out in Q2. Wasn't expecting that, really. I thought Gasly might have got through. Didn't know with Ricciardo. He struggled a bit at Hungary and is struggling again today. But we lose Ricciardo, Gasly, Vettel, Ocon, Stroll and Russell from Q2. But now it is the big part of qualifying. Time to move on to Q3. It's looking a little bit more like a sunny Mexico day here for Q3. And yeah, this is going to be a very interesting session. As always, no time to introduce the session. Just got to get into the laps as, oh dear, going a little bit close to the barrier there. Take it wide so we can gain as much speed as possible. And now we can begin our lap. The question is, where are the Mercs going to be? Where are the Red Bulls going to be? And also, my teammate, hopefully he can get into the mix. That would certainly be fantastic. A lot of pressure on him, I know, this weekend to perform because he hasn't had these results yet this season. But Sector 1 this lap, finally hooking it up really nicely. Didn't feel overly quickly through there, but I really felt like that was a decent sector as we do go nicely. Alonso on the cusp of the 1 minute 16s. Wow. on the edge there. Nearly getting to 1 minute 15s as we are very messy at the start of this sector. Charles Leclerc, 1 minute 15.4. Great lap from him. We get a warning for exceeding track limits. To be honest, I don't know where everyone's going to go. Bottas, 1 minute 15.0. Are we going to get into the 1 minute 14s here? We've been a bit sloppy this lap. We're going to, of course, go purple in the middle sector. But Perez, 1 minute 14.9. He is looking good. Where are we going to be once we've finished this lap? Of course, we've got to just nicely try and hook it up. Not really finding the pace at the moment. Let's get it tight and close to the line. It's going to be P4. Wasn't my best of laps. Let's see. Do we go again and continue to push? Carlos Sainz ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc. And Norris goes quickest. Wow. Well, we're having a stir-up in qualifying here. Very much so. It is very interesting here in Mexico. We haven't had this yet this season, and we are going to go for another flyer here because that's sort of the start to Sector 1's lovely. Verstappen goes quickest. Where is my teammate going to be? He's about to cross the line. He is on the best car. Well, he's in the best car in the field as we nicely get it through there without too much of a disaster. He doesn't manage to go quickest. Not entirely sure where he went. I wasn't looking at the order to see if he's gone ahead of us, but we are still pushing. Still trying to go quicker this lap. A warning. Wasn't much of a warning, really. Now, we're heading into the final sector. Not as great through the middle sector this lap, though, so really trading it around, but I feel a couple of tenths could mean about 4 grid places. To say that the best Merc, though, P5, they are not having the best of races. Well, qualifying's now. We're going to cross the line, going quicker. P1, that's enough for pole. Yuki managed P3. Now we're going to return to the pits to get a fresh set of tyres on. Look at that. What a lovely lap, though. That is certainly where we wanted to be, P1, and my teammate is right there in P3 too. We are going to have to get back out onto the track pretty soon on our final set of softs, but a bit of time to run down the order. We are currently leading Max Verstappen. It's then Yuki Tsunoda, my teammate, P3. Great to see him in the mix. Hopefully he can get a podium in the race tomorrow, but of course, P3... don't know, maybe he's still in it for pole. Maybe he's still in it for pole on the next lap, but we're going to certainly try and fight him for that. But Verstappen P2, the Red Bull's looking stronger now. His teammate Perez needs to do a lot more than that to fight us in the championship. He's down in P5, so pretty poor there from him. Lando Norris sneaking in P4, looking strong. The only McLaren in this session, but certainly not disappointing for the team. Then Mercedes have looked really, really decent in Q1 and Q2. Not as strong, though, in Q3, it seems, at the moment. Plenty of work for them two to do. It's Hamilton leads Bottas. That's P6 and P7. Neither of the Ferraris looking that great. Sainz still in the mix for the top 8 there, as you can see. You know, with it being under 5-10 separating the top 8. But Charles Leclerc really struggling compared to his teammate there. P9 for him. Got a lot of work to do. Those guys quite far down the field. Away from Norris. And then Alonso at the back. No real surprises, but he won again. It's the 1 minute 15s. Plenty still to play for at the end of this session. Can we improve and maybe put it out of those behind us reaches? But of course, we're going to have charging from Verstappen, my teammate Tsunoda, Perez. The Mercs are going to want to improve, so are the Ferraris. It's time to get into the final runs. Sadly for Fernando Alonso, clearly doesn't have any extra tyres, or maybe he's got a leak of something, maybe a coolant leak or an electronics issue. He hasn't gone out onto the track, and that means he will be P11, whether he likes it or not. Can't change that. Sadly for him, I was really hoping he'd get something decent in quali, but not really to be. My teammate is at the back of that train. Decided to go out a bit earlier ourselves, of course. That is so that we can maybe have 2 laps if we need it. As you can see, we are really fighting the car to get it round, and oh! Oh dear. That's not the plan, unsurprisingly. That's pretty much was it for quali, because even if we return to the pits, there's not going to be long enough. You can't drive quickly with this. So This is a real shame. I was too aggressive on the throttle, trying to correct a bit of all steering all over the place, and then we're off into the wall. So that's a real shame, and we'll just sort of drive round the lap and complete it, I guess so. I do want to be kind of on track so we can see the times flood in. Can Verstappen improve? But as you can see, very difficult to turn at the moment with the issues we've got with the front wing. Don't worry, guys, I'm not going to sabotage it and try and hold up cars. We're just going to sort of trundle along the main straight. Let's see. Can anyone improve? It's one of the Red Bulls first, whether that's Verstappen or Perez. They cross the line. Don't improve. Ferrari doesn't improve. Are we going to see anyone improving at this point? Are we? No. No, can my teammate improve from P3? This is very, very weird. It's very, very weird. Are they going to improve? Yuki, fancy improving? Yes! Oh, perfect! Perfect! Yuki's P2. Look at that. I think he might have been one of the only ones to improve. Perez stays P5, and we're going to return to the pits with this broken front wing. 1-2, you've got to love a bit of that. 1-2. Wow, that was a very stressful end to that qualifying session, because you just sat there driving around quite slowly, and everyone's going across the line, and they're not improving at all, really, that much. I think some people did improve, of course. I think Charles Leclerc did improve. Our teammate Yuki did improve, but a lot of drivers not going quicker. I don't know if they were going back out on used tyres or maybe the conditions, but despite the fact we managed to go and put it in the wall and broke our front wing off, we didn't need to go again. We finished ahead of my teammate Yuki by 2.2 hundredths. Nothing in it there, but great to see us too. P1 and 2. Finally, Yuki with a great result. Is he maybe trying to convince me to keep him? Maybe this is him trying to convince me to keep him. I don't know if he can keep it up into the race and then of course at Jeddah, but I might have to consider keeping him at the team. You don't know, because that's a very good quality result from him, just right behind us, and if he is exactly where we are, then that's exactly what we need him to do this season. Hasn't done that, but he's really improving, and that P2 for him, absolutely fantastic. We are on pole, though, for the Mexican GP. 1-2 for us, and I wouldn't count out ourselves, finishing ahead of Mercedes, actually, in the Constructors' standings. It is P3, Max Verstappen in his Red Bull. Not that far behind us, so the Red Bull's still looking pretty strong, but he's looking pretty decent, is Max Verstappen this weekend, of course, looking to fight against Lewis Hamilton in the standings for P3. And don't forget, he could get into the mix for P2 if Perez struggles a little bit, and he is down in P5, but it is Lando Norris P4. Great to see him up there, of course. 2 top 5 finishers at the last 2 races, and of course he's trying to set that up nicely with a P4 in Q3. Absolutely fantastic work from Lando there, splitting the Red Bulls ahead of both Mercs, both Ferraris, and the Alpine of Alonso. P4 for him. Wow, pretty fantastic, I gotta say. Then Checo is going to be disappointed with that high 1 minute 14, 1 minute 14.9 there. It's a bit of a shame for him, I think. Definitely want a bit of a fight between us two at Mexico. It's his home race, and it's ourselves trying to fight back in the championship. Don't forget, of course, he's still got Jeddah after this, so it's not going to decide it all this weekend. But Checo at his home track couldn't really put it all together. Quite a bit off his teammate. The work to do in the race for him, starting P5, 3/10 off ourselves, at least for him. He's ahead of the Mercedes. Hamilton leading Bottas. Bit of a change there, because we've seen consistently over the season Bottas does most of the time have the better quali pace over Lewis, and often the better race pace, but has fallen unlucky with some mechanical issues. But those two, very close to Red Bull in the R&D, not really as strong out on track, and really aren't looking that great. Maybe they showed their true potential in Q1 and Q2 and weren't leaving anything behind, like ourselves and Red Bull and McLaren for the final part of qualifying. So for Lewis and Valtteri, that's a little bit disappointing in Q3. A lot of work for them to do in the race. Of course, they're really fighting us now in terms of the constructors, because with P1 and 2, we could be taking a haul of points in the race. And then the Ferraris, Charles Leclerc out-qualifies his teammate Carlos Sainz, manages to improve, but way off the McLaren of Lando Norris. A bit of a disappointment for Charles, wanted to be fighting with Lando, and the gap there isn't that big in terms of the actual time gap, but the position gap really is quite big. 4 places down the field for Charles. It's going to be a bit of work for him in the race if he wants to catch up to Lando, and then of course outscore Lando, because they are on equal points in the championship. So for Charles, P8, it's an improvement on where he was before his second run in Q3, but still a little bit disappointing. Only just behind the Mercs though, so they could fight them in the race. And of course Carlos Sainz, P9, a shame he couldn't really get anything better than that, because he was looking great in Q1 and Q2, but at the end of Q3 just didn't really fall lucky for him. And then Fernando Alonso didn't go out again, quite a way behind, I've got to say, but great to see him in Q3, and hopefully he can grab some points in the race. But in terms of the teams, looking great for ourselves. Red Bull, it could have been better, but not terrible. Mercedes, a bit poor for them behind Red Bull. Ferrari, they'll be happy to be ahead of Danny Rick, and Danny Rick, of course, being P11, but annoyed that Lando is up in P4, and McLaren, it's going to be half smiling, half frustration for them at the garage. 2 different sides, I think, of emotion there, but pivotal for the championship, I have to say. Ourselves looking comfortably ahead of Perez, and of course my teammate Yuki could be fighting me for the win in the race tomorrow. Hopefully he can grab his first podium of the season with ourselves, of course. So we'll have to wait and see. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because you're certainly not going to want to miss this race video. Final run down the order is ourselves ahead of Tsunoda, then it's Verstappen, Norris, Perez, Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc, Sainz and Alonso. As always, plenty of questions to be answered in the race. Can Alonso take points? That's quite an interesting question. Can the Ferraris fight up to Lando Norris in his McLaren? What about Mercedes versus Red Bull versus ourselves? And then, of course, the pivotal question. Can Perez rival us and get towards us to potentially reduce what could be a points loss for him this weekend if we've got this amount of pace? But P1 and 2 for ourselves on the grid. Pole for me. P2 for Yuki. You love to see it. And what an intense Q3. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. And I'll catch you all sometime soon when we move on to the race in Mexico.